In a dramatic pivot away from the immediate threat of military strikes, President Donald Trump's administration has unleashed a new weapon in its escalating confrontation with Moscow. A massive economic ultimatum. In a primetime address from the Oval Office, President Trump announced that the Russian Federation has been given a 50-day deadline to meet a specific set of American demands regarding the conflict in Ukraine. If Russia fails to comply by the end of this period, the United States will impose a crippling 100% tariff on all goods imported from Russia. This move represents one of the most aggressive use of economic power in modern history, a policy designed to wage total economic war as an alternative to a direct military conflict. The announcement has effectively reset the clock on the global crisis, replacing the fear of imminent missile strikes with the certainty of a severe economic showdown that could permanently reorder global trade. President Trump's address was direct and framed in stark, simple terms for the American public. He stated that after Moscow's arrogant and foolish rejection of his previous private warning, he was left with a choice: immediate military action or a different path that would choke the Russian war machine without firing a single shot. He presented the tariff plan as a smarter, more powerful option. "We have the greatest economy in the world," the president declared, looking directly into the camera, "and we are going to use that power. A 100% tariff means that for every dollar of goods Russia tries to sell in America, they will have to pay $1 in tax. We will make it impossible for them to profit from our market. We will cut off the money they use to build their tanks, their missiles, and their bombs. We are giving them 50 days. It is a very generous offer. They can choose peace and prosperity, or they can choose economic ruin. The choice is theirs." This sudden shift in strategy was the result of a series of intense and acrimonious debates within the highest level of the Trump administration. The fall of Pokrovsk had pushed the internal conflict to a breaking point. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth had forcefully argued that the defeat in Ukraine, coupled with Moscow defiance, demanded a swift and decisive military response, contended that anything less would be seen as a sign of American weakness. However, a powerful coalition within the cabinet pushed back, warning of catastrophic consequences. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard presented stark assessment of a high probability of escalation into a nuclear exchange. Secretary of State Marco Rubio relayed the deep anxiety of NATO allies, who feared being dragged into a continental war. And Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent laid out a terrifying vision of the global economic collapse that would follow a direct U.S.-Russia war. Ultimately, President Trump sided with the voice urging caution against an immediate military strike. The tariff proposal, championed by his economic team, emerged as a viable and potent compromise. It allowed the president to take decisive action, project an image of immense strength, and impose a tangible penalty on Russia, all while avoiding the incalculable risk of a shooting war. The policy was primarily designed by Secretary Benson, in close coordination with Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick and United States Trade Representative Jamison Greer. In a press briefing following the president's address, Secretary Benson explained the administration's logic. He acknowledged that there would be some economic disruption, but framed it as a necessary and manageable cost to defend American interests and global stability. This is not a standard trade dispute, Benson stated. This is a tool of national security. We are targeting the revenue streams that fund a hostile government's military aggression. Any short-term price increase on specific goods are a small price to pay to prevent a much larger and more destructive conflict. The specifics of the American demands, which Russia must meet within the 50 days window, are stringent and far-reaching. The White House has made it clear that partial compliance will not be acceptable. The core demands include: first, a complete and internationally verifiable ceasefire across all fronts in Ukraine. Second, the immediate halt of all Russian offensive operations and the withdrawal of all Russian forces, including regular army units and mercenary groups, to the positions they held prior to February 2014. This specific demand effectively requires Russia to relinquish not only its gain from the current invasion, but also its control over Crimea, a condition Moscow has repeatedly sworn it will never accept. Third, Russia must grant unfettered access to international inspectors from the United Nations to monitor and verify the troop withdrawal from all Ukrainian territories. These conditions are widely seen by international observers as being deliberately designed to be rejected, suggesting that the administration is fully prepared to implement the tariff. The task of implementing this unprecedented economic measure is monumental. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick's department is now working around the clock to prepare for the potential tariff implementation. This involves identifying every single product category that originates in Russia, from raw materials like oil, gas, and metals to more finished goods. His department must coordinate with U.S. Customs and Border Protection at every port of entry, air, land, and sea, to ensure that the 100% tax is ready to be applied on the 51st day. This requires massive logistical and administrative effort to reprogram tariff schedules and ensure uniform enforcement across the country. Lutnick's team is also in contact with American companies that rely on Russians import, advising them to find alternative suppliers immediately. The legal and diplomatic challenge fall to Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, a 100% The legal and diplomatic challenges fall to Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative. A 100% unilateral tariff on all goods from one country is a clear violation of the rules of the World Trade Organization (WTO), of which Russia is a member. Greer is tasked with defending the American action on the world stage. He is preparing to invoke Article XXI of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, a rarely used national security exception that allows a country to break trade rules if it deems it necessary for the protection of its essential security interests. This argument will undoubtedly be challenged by Russia and other nations at the WTO, setting the stage for a major legal battle over the fundamental rules of global trade. Greer's office is also responsible for negotiating with allies, urging them to adopt similar measures to maximize the economic pressure on Moscow. The international reaction has been swift and deeply divided. The Kremlin responded with predictable fury and derision. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called the American ultimatum an act of pure economic banditry and a declaration of total economic war. He stated that Russia would not bow to blackmail and would reorient its economy eastward. The Russian government has threatened its own retaliatory measures, including the potential nationalization of any remaining American assets in Russia and a complete ban on the export of critical materials to the West, such as enriched uranium for nuclear power plants and palladium used in automotive and electronic manufacturing. In Europe, the reaction is one of profound apprehension mixed with a degree of relief. European leaders are glad that Washington has stepped back from the brink of direct military conflict. However, they are now facing a severe economic dilemma. The American plan will cause significant disruption to global energy and commodity markets, which will have a direct and painful impact on European economies, many of which are more integrated with Russia's than the U.S. economy is. Secretary of State Rubio is engaged in an intense diplomatic campaign to persuade European Union leaders to join the tariff plan, but he is facing significant resistance. Nations like Germany and Italy are worried about the economic blowback, while countries like Hungary are openly sympathetic to Moscow. This has the potential to create a major rift within the Western alliance. China has strongly condemned the American move. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry stated that Beijing opposed unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction that have no basis in international law. Chinese officials see the U.S. action as a dangerous precedent that weaponized the global economic system and could be used against them in the future. Economically, however, China may stand to benefit if Russian goods are locked out of the American market. Russia will be forced to sell its raw materials like oil and gas to China at a significant discount, strengthening Beijing's economic positions at Moscow's expense. Domestically, the announcement has ignited a firestorm of debate. Within the American business community, there is widespread alarm. While overall trade with Russia is relatively small for the U.S. economy as a whole, specific sectors are heavily dependent on Russian imports. The U.S. nuclear power industry relies on Russia for a significant portion of its enriched uranium. The aerospace and automotive industries import Russian titanium and palladium. The agricultural sector imports Russian fertilizers. Leaders in these industries are warning of severe supply chain disruption and sharp price increase that will ultimately be passed on to American consumers. Kelly Loeffler, the administrator of the Small Business Administration, is preparing for a wave of requests for assistance from smaller businesses that will be disproportionately affected by the sudden severing of these supply chains. The political reaction in Washington is split along predictable lines. President Trump's supporters in Congress have hailed the move as a brilliant strategic play, a way to punish Russia severely without risking American lives. They are framing it as peace through economic strength. However, opponents are decrying the policy as reckless and ill-conceived. They argue that the 100% tariff will inflict more pain on American families and businesses than on the Kremlin, which they believe will find other markets for its good. They also warn that it sets a dangerous precedent, giving future presidents the power to shatter global trade norms with a single declaration. Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez, the rammer, has reportedly expressed private concerns to the president about potential job losses in specific industries that will be hit hardest, even as she publicly supports the administration's tough stance. The world is now on a new tense countdown. The 50-day deadline creates a period of extreme uncertainty. Financial markets are bracing for impacts. Companies are scrambling to overhaul their supply chains, and diplomats are working furiously behind the scenes to find a way to de-escalate the crisis. The Trump administration has successfully shifted the battlefield from a military one to an economic one, but the stakes remain just as high. If Russia refuses to comply and the U.S. implement its tariff, the resulting economic shock could trigger a global recession. The fundamental conflict remains unresolved, and the threat of military action has not vanished. It has merely been postponed. The world now waits to see if this unprecedented economic gamble will force Moscow to retreat or if it will simply serve as the opening salvo in a new and even more bitter Cold War. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to Sokhane Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.